Good evening, everybody, and welcome. May I remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live via the internet and the record archived for future viewing. Also, as it's a very, very warm evening, gentlemen, you may take your jackets off. Moving on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, please, Chair. Ruby Stephen-Agnam.
Are there any more? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2, to hear the roll call and to receive declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct.
Councillor Julie Aviat. Councillor Vincent Bailey. Councillor Rhiannon Birch. Councillor Jonathan Bird. Councillor Bronwyn Brooks. Councillor Liz Burnett. Councillor George Carroll. Councillor Christine Cave. Councillor Janice Charles.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Millie Collins. Councillor Jeff Cox.
President, and I have a declaration to make. I'm Clerk of the Trustees to the Evan Jenkins Charity, but I have dispensation to speak and vote in meetings of the Vale of Glamorgan Council, join any debate in connection with matters involving the LDP, save for the Evan Jenkins Charity candidate site.
Councillor Robert Crowley. Councillor Pamela Drake. Councillor Vince Driscoll. Councillor Stuart Edwards. Councillor Ben Gray. Councillor Owen Griffiths. Councillor Stephen Griffiths. Councillor Tony Hampton. Councillor Sally Hanks. Councillor Nick Hodges. Councillor Hunter Jarvie.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Ian Johnson. Councillor Gordon Kemp.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Peter King.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Matthew Lloyd.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Kevin Marnie. Councillor Catherine McCaffer. Councillor Anne Moore. Councillor Neil Moore. Councillor Michael Morgan. Councillor Jane Norman. Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn. Councillor Andrew Parker.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Bob Penrose.
Present and nothing to declare.
Councillor Sandra Perks. Councillor Andrew Robertson.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor Leighton Rowlands.
Present, nothing to declare.
Councillor John Thomas.
Present, I declare an interest, a personal and prejudicial interest in agenda item 5, and I will be leaving the chamber.
Councillor Neil Thomas. Councillor Stefan William. Councillor Margaret Wilkinson. Councillor Eddie Williams. Councillor Mark Wilson. Councillor Margarita Wright.
Please could I ask you for 1 minute silence and be upstanding in memory of ex-councillor A.J. Williams and his wife Faith. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, to approve the meetings of the meeting held on the 26th of April 2017.
Move the minutes, Madam Mayor.
Second.
Thank you. Moving on to the annual meeting held on the 24th of May 2017. For accuracy.
Move the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4, to receive any announcements from the Mayor, Leader, members of the Cabinet and the Head of Paid Services, and to receive any petitions submitted by members. I have a few things I would like to say, and it is with great sadness that we have heard of the sad passing of former Vale of Glamorgan councillor A.J. Williams, known as Tony, and his wife Faith on Sunday the 18th of June, tragically in their garden in Welsh St Donats. Tony represented the Peterston Super Ely ward of the Vale of Glamorgan Council up until his retirement from local government and the council in 2007. He was also a former mayor and deputy leader of the council throughout his long and distinguished career. Tony was recognised in the New Year's Honours List in 2004 when he was awarded an MBE for services to local government and conservation in the Vale of Glamorgan. Our sympathies and condolences go to Tony and Faith's daughter, Dr. Ruth Williams. During my first month in office, I have attended civic functions both inside and outside the Vale of Glamorgan, charity events, concerts, and visited schools and care homes. I was honoured to officially start the New Horizons Centre Triathlon and also to visit their centre, and thoroughly enjoyed taking part in the community big lunch at Ysgolyderi. The twinning weekend was hugely enjoyable, and everybody that visited Barry Island enjoyed meeting them, talking to them, and what they had on offer. A team effort which showcased the Vale to its best advantage. They did it very well. I'm also grateful to the Mayor of Llantwit Major, Councillor Jane Norman, and her consort, Councillor Margaret Wilkinson, who gave me a very warm welcome to Victorian Fair Day in Llantwit Major. I would also like to pass on my congratulations to those who received honours in the Queen's birthday list. Dr. Simon O'Donovan, MBE, Mr. Edward Jenkins, BEM, and Mrs. Janet Parry, BEM. Finally, I am pleased to announce that my civic service will be held on Sunday, October the 1st, and that my first charity event is a gin tasting evening, which will be held on Wednesday, the 26th of July. Chin chin, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, report of the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just let John leave the chamber. Okay. Right. I bring this report to you tonight after long talks with our officers, exploring all our options to how we adopt this LDP. Also, we've been in talks with Welsh Government and have sent 2 requests, one to review the housing numbers and one to request an extension of time, both of which were unequivocally denied, as shown by the letter tabled tonight. I urge this Council to adopt the LDP as reported to you in your bundle, which I will summarise now. The main reason for this is to protect the Vale of Glamorgan from speculative development outside of the LDP.
Point of order, the members referred to a letter tabled tonight, but I don't have that.
I was under the impression it was going to be tabled tonight. No? It will be tabled as soon as we can get it. I have one here. If
Request a deferral until we have a copy of that to see what you're
no.
Arms that.
Well, I'll pass it around. You can pass it around during my... I'll read it. Yeah, okay, I'll read it. It's from Leslie Griffiths, AM, and it's to myself. Dear Councillor Bird, I note your request of the 23rd of June, seeking my agreement as set out in Regulation 25 of the Town and Country Planning Act, Regulations 2005, to extend the time period for adoption of the LDP by your council beyond the statutory 8-week period specified in the regulations. The reasons you give are that the leader, Councillor John Thomas, has expressed concern regarding housing supply figures in the LDP and their basis in historic population projections of the Vale. These matters have already been thoroughly considered, and as part of the independent examination of the LDP. The inspector's report received by council on May the 25th is binding. The local planning authority may not question the inspector's conclusions. The local planning authority cannot therefore raise any further matters after the receipt of the inspector's report. There is no reason for delaying the adoption of your LDP beyond the 8-week period. A council report and supporting documentation recommending adoption of the LDP on the 28th of June at Council is publicly available on your website. I therefore decline your request for extending the period within which you must adopt the LDP. I expect you to adhere to your statutory duty and adopt the LDP by the 20th of July in line with Regulation 25 of the Town and Country Planning Act. Regards, Leslie Griffiths. Happy? Well, that's the letter. If you wish to see it, it's here. Sorry? Okay. Right. So, the report tonight is to advise Council of the Inspector's binding report and the examination of the Vale of Glamorgan LDP. In brief, the recommendations are that the Council note the findings of the Inspector's binding report, endorse adoption statement and final sustainability appraisal, and approve the adoption of the Vale of Glamorgan LDP. 2. The Head of Regeneration Planning or Operational Manager for Development Management be authorised to make any outstanding typographical or factual corrections to the LDP in accordance with paragraph 113 of the Inspector's report. 3. That the LDP is translated and published in accordance with 2005 LDP regulations. 4. That the adopted supplementary planning guidance, SPGs, continue to be used as material considerations in determination of planning applications until they are replaced or otherwise withdrawn. Excuse me. So the background to this, there's a statutory requirement for every local authority to have an LDP in its area. The Council commenced the LDP process in June 2006, and the LDP was submitted to Welsh Government on the 24th of July 2015. The LDP will be used to guide and manage development and will replace the Glamorgan UDP, or Unitary Development Plan, which ran from 1996 to 2011. The LDP was submitted for independent examination to Welsh Government on the 24th of July 2015. 22 hearing sessions were held and commenced on the 19th of January 2016 and concluded on the 20th of April 16. Matters arising changes, MACs, were proposed in response to the action points and matters raised and at these hearing sessions, and the Inspector held a further 4 hearing sessions between 24th of January 17 and the 1st of February 17 to conclude proceedings. A copy of the Inspector's report is attached to Appendix 1. The Inspector's recommended and binding changes need to meet legal and statutory requirements and ensure that the plan is sound and are set out in appendices to the report. A non-technical summary is available at Appendix 2. The report concludes that, subject to the recommended changes, the plan meets the test of soundness set out in Planning Policy Wales. In concluding this, the Inspector has considered that the Council provided sufficient evidence to support the LDP strategy and has shown that it has realistic prospect of being delivered. The 2005 LDP regulations require the authority to adopt the LDP within 8 weeks of receipt of the recommendations and reasons from the Inspector. Recommended changes have been shown in bold in the Inspector's report. Almost all of the recommended changes were put forward by the Council as part of MACs or further MACs, processed in response to matters raised during the examination period. Excuse me. A small number of changes were considered not necessary for soundness, but would provide help in clarity. These were MAC 1 and MAC 79. They were typographical changes. They're not subject to the Inspector's binding recommendations, however, are being changed to finalise the LDP. The changes not recommended by the Inspector, FMAC 6 and 7, quality requirements for affordable housing, MAP FAC CO4 and MAP MAC 64, basically ensuring a map of Argoed Isha quarry is retained, and MAP MAC 120 and 1 to 122 wind search areas are not required because they are less than 5 megawatts. 3 additional Inspector proposed changes, IMACs, have been recommended. IMAC 1 clarifies the requirements for on-site delivery of affordable housing. IMAC 2 provides clarification of the wording and criteria in policy MD17. IMAC 3 includes additional wording to policy MG22. That's about dormant mineral sites. The Inspector at paragraph 113, Council authorisation, the Inspector at paragraph 113 gives the Council authorisation to amend any typographical or factual errors arising from the examination. A track changes version is available at Appendix 3. A final composite version of the LDP written statement is also attached to Appendix 4. The issues highlighted are, as highlighted above, the Council is required to adopt the LDP within 8 weeks of receipt of the Inspector's report. The Inspector's report and its recommendations are binding, and there are no opportunities to request changes after the receipt of the report. As the UDP is now time expired, to protect the Vale of Glamorgan from unchecked speculative development, it is essential to ensure that an up-to-date policy framework is available to effectively guide future development within the Vale of Glamorgan. The LDP will become operative at the date it is adopted. Should the Council not agree to adopt the LDP tonight, the Welsh Government has default powers to intervene and approve the LDP on its behalf, and will charge us for the process. I'm not quite sure of figures, but 150,000 was mentioned as a rough idea to the cost of an inspector doing it. National planning policy requires that local planning authorities demonstrate there's a 5-year housing land supply. At the time the plan is adopted, at the time the plan was adopted, without an adopted LDP, the Council will be unable to formally demonstrate a housing land supply. The council housing land supply trajectory prepared for examination indicates that housing land supply will be 5.6 years if adopted. The LDP provides a stronger policy framework for matters that have moved forward in the planning system since the preparation and adoption of the UDP. So, in accordance with the LDP regulations, the adopted LDP will be published by means of a statutory notice, and the LDP and associated documents will be published on the Council's website and made available at local deposit locations. Once adopted, the LDP will be subject to a 6-week challenge period to the High Court. The Council has a number of adopted SPGs, Supplementary Planning Guidance documents. In order to ensure conformity with LDP policies, a review of these will be carried out as soon as is possible. In the interim, it is proposed that the existing SPGs will be carried forward, all bar golf-related development, which will be deleted and no longer used in the development management decisions. Draft affordable housing SPG have been prepared and take account of LDP policies, as well as the latest evidence and guidance on public consultation on the draft documents that have taken place over the last 6 months. Changes from the consultation will ensure that, sorry, I'm getting a bit mixed up here now, will ensure that the adoption of these SPGs will be current, and these adoptions will take place via Cabinet reports in the near future. So, I think that's me. I've led you into that. I have a few other points to make. Just to note that some of the SPGs that will be coming through over the next 2 years are renewable energy, the travel plan, household design and guidance, enterprise zone, and mineral safeguarding. So you'll see those come through Cabinet over the next 2 years. Following the adoption of the Council, the adoption of the LDP, Council must submit an annual monitoring report. The first monitoring report is due in October 18. This will assess the extent at which the policies are being successful. The Council must also undertake a mandatory plan to review within 4 years its adoption, 4 years of its adoption, sorry, to ensure the LDP remains up to date. The plan review will need to consider effectiveness of the plan in delivering strategy. Thank you. So is everyone going to have one of these now, Karen? Yeah, okay, thank you. This would include ensuring that there would be sufficient provision to meet future needs over the planned period. Alternatively, if a major infrastructure project came forward that was demonstrated as being needed and deliverable, this could also be considered as part of the plan review process. I now ask you to vote to accept this LDP. I can give you my assurance that we will start reviewing parts of the LDP and SPGs in the very near future with a full review as soon as is possible. I request now that a recorded vote is taken on the adoption of this LDP. I put the any amendments and any amendments that may come. I put that to you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, recorded vote will be taken. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. No one else seems to want to start off on this. Bit of a shambles, really, isn't it? You know, having papers being provided on the day. We had a briefing here at 4 o'clock this afternoon. That paper wasn't provided us then. It wasn't provided to us at 6 o'clock this evening. We have the leader of the council having to declare an interest and leaving the room. It's not a great start to this administration. I would like to thank the staff who've worked on the LDP over the 11 years that it's been in progress, apparently costing £3 million. It's a huge undertaking. Sadly, there has been a gap at the heart of the plan caused by the economic recession that started in 2007 and ignored by successive council leaderships. That recession reduced economic growth, reduced population change, and subsequently we should have reduced our targets when we had the chance. The withdrawal of plans for the St Athan Defence Training Academy, the impact of Brexit uncertainty, have also been ignored in this process. In Plaid Cymru's opinion, those flaws are so significant this plan cannot be accepted. Although our MP, now the Secretary of State for Wales, fought an election campaign on working with communities against Labour's plans for 10,000 new homes, his 2015 leaflet, that was the successful one, the really successful one. The reality is the original Conservative LDP included almost 11,000 houses, including Waycott Cross. Returning members will recall that in 2013 I exposed how the population growth figures from the 2011 census were 40% different from those underpinning our LDP. The then Chair of Planning challenged me to accept the revised Welsh Government housing figures when they were next published. I said I would, and Welsh Government housing projections in 2014 confirmed Plaid Cymru's stance that the LDP included far more housing than was required in the Vale. The principal projection was for 5,600 houses, our LDP for 10,000. Since the plan was submitted to the inspector, further Welsh Government household projections were published earlier this year. Those show a required housing growth of 4,000 houses from 2011 to 2026, when our council wants to build 10,000. And many people in this room will have delivered leaflets or seen leaflets from the Conservative Party saying that they were against these. Whoever we're building these houses for, though, they're not for us here in the Vale. There is, I must say, an issue with much needed social housing, but delays to Brecon Court development, for example, have undermined our commitment to that locally, while the Conservatives' bedroom tax has massively skewed house building policy in the RSL sector, forcing us to build large numbers of one-bed units that should not have been necessary, rather than deal directly with need and overcrowding. They should be ashamed of that policy and lobby UK and Welsh Government to scrap it. Returning to our housing projections, there are problems which stem from us being out of step with Welsh Government projections. The city region, which we passed a few months ago, includes Welsh Government projections. So does the Cardiff and Vale UHB population needs assessment, also agreed by the former council. Everybody else is planning for a different future than us. The LDP also notes that half our working population leave the Vale each day. In the overheated and overpopulated south-east of the Vale, that invariably means Cardiff. But this LDP offers no infrastructure solution to deal with the housing growth and inevitable congestion it creates. There is no Dinas Powys bypass in this LDP. And despite the rhetoric, despite the leaflets, we know how the Conservatives feel about this. Because when I put forward an amendment to include a Dinas Powys bypass in the local transport plan, a document that runs until 2030, all of the Conservatives on this council voted against it. All of them. 5 of those Conservative councillors are in the Cabinet today, including the member for planning. Madam Mayor, I have other concerns, but limited time to discuss them. Like the Cabinet member, I have carefully studied Regulation 25, 25A, the Local Development Plan Regulations as amended, and also the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. I'm pleased by the attempts made by the administration to get something from the Welsh Government out of this, but you've failed. Now, I don't want to be bullied by Cardiff Bay when their figures, their Welsh Government Housing Department figures, are well out of step with ours. There's a problem. And if they won't reconsider that, there's an even bigger problem going on. I don't think this council should be bullied, and therefore I move an amendment to tonight's recommendation number 1, that the council notes the findings of the inspector's report and recommend to the National Assembly that further time is provided so that the inspector may reconsider issues relating to projected levels of housing numbers and transport infrastructure in the south-east of the Vale of Glamorgan, and that further recommendations are deleted. I have read it. You're being bullied. Ignore them. Go back to them. Tell them again. With the full power of this council, you've got a majority. Absolutely. If you believe it, go for it. Yes. I hope members will join me in returning this flawed, unsound plan to the inspector, and I hope to see you support us on this.
I don't know if that was a question or a statement, but it seemed like a statement to me, and it was an amendment. But what I will say to you... You're not summing up, are you? No, I'm not summing up, no. What I will say to you, though, I'm just replying to your response, that the housing allocation figures were contested. The inspector made specific references to the 2014 household projections at paragraph 4.6 of the report, and his view that the advanced stage of the examination and the urgent need for an up-to-date development plan, combined with the need for growth, meant that any delay in adoption would not be acceptable. These figures, you know, are given to us by Welsh Government. We have tried to challenge them unsuccessfully. I have requested for a delay unsuccessfully. The paper is there in front of you. Have you got a seconder for your amendment?
I put my hand up before you stood
Okay.
up.
Okay. Well, do we vote on the amendment now, or do you want me to carry on?
No, after the debate, John.
Okay.
I'm
Fine.
bringing in Councillor Vincent Bailey now, please.
I just remind that we did agree that all amendments and the substantive motion would be voted upon by recorded vote.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Cabinet Member, for the opportunity to speak on these proposals. Cabinet Member, I've listened closely to your contribution this evening, and I am in great sympathy with the situation in which the administration finds itself. Forced by the Welsh Government's planning law to adopt Labour's LDP, over a barrel with no other avenues left to explore in order to delay a decision, and it is on that basis alone. And with a heavy heart, I will be voting to adopt the LDP tonight. Much has been said about Labour's housing targets, and I would like to put on record my concerns about the target for 10,000 homes to be built over the lifetime of the plan. And I'm holding up a letter this evening which was sent today from the Minister, not allowed to question the inspector's conclusions, it says, declining the legitimate request of a newly elected authority to look again. And in light of the Welsh Labour Government's unwillingness to listen to the concerns of elected members and residents, can I ask Cabinet Member if you will be willing to recommend an urgent and immediate review of key aspects of this LDP? That would send a strong message to Barry residents that we will continue to fight inappropriate development. And finally, in my own ward, there have been long-standing concerns around proposals at Bryn Hill and Waycock Cross, and I would be grateful for your reassurance that sites such as these will be afforded greater protection from development if we are to adopt the LDP this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Mahoney, please. Point of order. What is your order? What is your point of order, please?
There isn't one. Just an excuse.
It's a request for clarification. I'm aware that in the past Councillor Bird has missed some of my speeches on this matter because he declared an interest and left the room regarding lands near Coed Mawr. I'm just wondering if that was the suggestion was discussing that area and whether the declaration was relevant.
No interest was declared at the start, I would say. Can Councillor Mahoney speak now, please?
Thank you. I'd like to start off. There's a couple of issues that have actually been raised by two people today. Number one, I have to once again highlight the disingenuous nature of Plaid Cymru when referring to their infamous amendment about the Dinas Powys bypass. They were so unintelligent when they presented this that they forced people such as myself who were in favour of the Dinas Powys bypass to actually vote against it simply because their amendment included accepting the transport plan if that was included, and I was against the transport plan, and yet they keep bringing this up all the time. Some people voted against it because you were too unintelligent to present it correctly. Secondly, it's too many houses. Many of us here know that it's too many houses. We've spoken about it time and time again. I didn't say a word while you were speaking. Time and time again, we've pointed out there's too many houses. The point is, if you are forced into these housing numbers, there are too many houses in the wrong places. You can't fit another car on the transport infrastructure going through Penarth or Dinas. That's the point, and it was our planning department who came up, and the previous administration who came up with those locations for that housing. That's the point. And one last thing, we just heard a comment from over there. During the last election, just gone, the two unsuccessful Conservative candidates in Sully actually were proclaiming in their leaflets that they'd actually got a commitment for a review of the new administration. Now we got somebody who is asking for it. If they'd got a commitment, how come you're now asking for it? We need a bit more truth from representatives of political parties as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mahoney. Councillor Nick Hodges.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, of course, we've got a Tory councillor in Sully now anyway. Right. As long as the Conservatives have got a heavy heart, that's okay. Can I actually pick up a few things that have happened incredibly recently in council planning that show the inability of this LDP to carry forward the wishes and needs of the Vale of Glamorgan and its people? Recently, we've had a huge growth of housing on the waterfront, contained within the LDP, agreed, ongoing and continuing to happen. And now we have the threat of the promised leisure, retail and associated industries within that seem to be sliding away with the threat of being lost. There was an inability in a planning meeting to show a local business of long standing the possibility of providing space within Barry for them to expand and retain their business in this town. There was an inability to show a prospective new supermarket and the jobs that it would provide a space within this town. 6 years in to this LDP that we haven't even agreed yet, nothing happening at St Athan. And we know why. Promises were made about an academy, which fell through. Nothing about a Dinas Powys bypass, which has been kicked so far into the long grass that I will be a pensioner before we even get a chance to look at it again. A transport plan years ahead, an LDP that will not consider it, in spite of political promises made. And that Dinas Powys bypass is not only vital to Dinas Powys, but it's vital to the future of South Barry and the connections between us and Cardiff. You already heard from Councillor Johnson that an ever-increasing amount of our residents in this town and to the west of us travel through Barry and beyond to Cardiff, and the infrastructure simply isn't there. If we are going to have the promise of SPGs being reviewed, well, I would ask this council to look at an additional one or two as well. The recently agreed Parking Standards SPG, which we couldn't even use in our own offices to back up schemes, and all the problems that would result as a result of that. I also have to ask, seeing this LDP will stand us until 2026, and seeing it's taken us 6 years of this LDP to get to the next this LDP, it could be 2032 next time we have to put something forward. I think we need an urgent review of burial space within the Vale of Glamorgan. I'll leave it at that. I can't support this. This does not suit our people, our residents and our council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Councillor George Carroll.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and may I begin by welcoming both you and the Cabinet Member to your respective positions. I appreciate that the phrase baptism of fire may be used quite regularly in politics, but I think in light of the Welsh Government's disappointing response this afternoon, it has put the Cabinet Member in a difficult position, and I do have every sympathy with him for that. I shall be voting for the adoption of the LDP under somewhat of duress this evening. Obviously, in light of the fact that a new council has been elected, I do think it would have been beneficial for more time to have been given to the new administration to enable them to reconsider the current situation. In light of this, will the Cabinet Member join me in expressing his disappointment at the Welsh Government's response, particularly since there is now a new council in place, and as such having more time at the very least to consider both this and indeed the inappropriate and arbitrary housing targets for the Vale would have been more appropriate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to thank the Plaid Cymru councillors for bringing the attention of the Dinas Powys bypass. It's a pity really I haven't done it over the last 30 odd years, but there you go. I'd like to ask Councillor Bird that with the big increase in housing in Dinas Powys, the effect the bypass will have on Dinas Powys, it's not mentioned in the LDP, and this does concern us a little bit. Could he elaborate a bit on that? Thank you.
perhaps in his summing up he may answer you. Thank you. Councillor Johnson, can you repeat your amendment, please?
My amendment was that recommendation 1, that Council note the findings of the Inspector's report and recommend to the National Assembly that further time is provided so that the Inspector may reconsider issues relating to projected levels of housing numbers and transport infrastructure in the south-east of the Vale of Glamorgan, with further recommendations deleted.
Can you follow that in writing as well, please?
I can follow that in writing, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Bird, would you like to sum up? Thank you.
Okay, well, firstly on that point, I don't know what to say when I've provided you with a letter which is fairly black and white in its meaning and gives you... I'm speechless, actually, that you can't understand this. Anyway, it's there. We've requested. We've been denied. It is Welsh Government that set the legislation, not us. I think you're thinking things are the wrong way round. So we'll see how the amendment goes. As far as reassurance, yes, I can give you reassurance that having an LDP will protect unmentioned sites, i.e. sites that are not in the LDP. By having no LDP, these sites are very vulnerable. And I think it is essential to protect our residents of the Vale of Glamorgan from willy-nilly development. So I urge you to think again, and I will give you my reassurance that having an LDP is far, far safer than not having one. I can give Councillor Marnie reassurance that we will be reviewing things. We will be reviewing every part of this, and we will be reviewing it as quickly as we can. It has to be done within 4 years. We will try and do it quicker. We will be looking at SPGs straight away. And again, Councillor Hodges was asking about that. So I'll give you my reassurance that we will be looking at the SPGs. The infrastructure that Councillor Marnie and Councillor Driscoll mentioned, I can assure you, again, I did mention it in my opening gambit, although I guess it wasn't that clear, that infrastructure that isn't in the LDP, if proved viable and deliverable, can be put into the LDP without too much difficulty. We are at stage 1 with the Dinas Powys bypass investigation, shortly to move into stage 2. We have funding for the M4 link for stage 1 and stage 2, and that will be progressing very shortly. We are also in talks with Welsh Government, who have requested us meet them along with our neighbouring authorities to discuss all these infrastructure issues. So we are on the case with the infrastructure. There was one other item. Yes, Councillor Carroll, I am a little disappointed, to say the least, in Welsh Government's attitude. It is a bully boy attitude. We have all seen the 2014 projections, and we all agree that they are more realistic. But what am I to do when we have asked them and they have come back with such a bullish reply? I have tried, the leader has tried. I don't know what cloud you think you're on by trying again. You think you've got something special to offer. I can't see us getting a reply from them. I think they'll just adopt this LDP on our behalf, which will end up costing this council a lot of money. The time when we have no LDP, we will be putting our residents at risk from unplanned development. So if you want to be responsible for this, don't vote for the LDP. If you want to be responsible, I urge you, adopt this LDP.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. We will take the amendment and it will be a recorded delivery, but I would like to pass over to Rob Thomas.
Okay, so the taking the amendment, And the amendment is that Council note the findings of the Inspector's report and recommend to the National Assembly that further time is provided so that the Inspector may reconsider issues relating to projected level of housing numbers and transport infrastructure in the southeast of the Vale of Glamorgan, with further recommendations deleted. So that is the amendment as put forward. And can I ask members, when they vote, to say for the amendment or against the amendment, please? So if we start with Councillor Julie Aviat. Councillor Vincent Bailey. Against. Councillor Rhiannon Birch. Against. Councillor Jonathan Bird.
Against. Surprise.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks. Against. Councillor Liz Burnett. Councillor George Carroll. Against. Councillor Christine Cave. Against. Councillor Janice Charles.
Against.
Councillor Millie Collins. For. Councillor Jeff Cox. Against. Councillor Robert Crowley. Against. Councillor Pamela Drake. Councillor Vince Driscoll. Councillor Stuart Edwards. Against. Councillor Ben Gray. Against. Councillor Owen Griffiths. Councillor Stephen Griffiths. Against. Councillor Tony Hampton. Against. Councillor Sally Hanks. Against. Councillor Nick Hodges. For. Councillor Hunter Jarvie.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Gwyn John.
Against.
Councillor Ian Johnson. Councillor Gordon Kemp.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Peter King.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Matthew Lloyd.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Kevin Marnie. Councillor Catherine McCaffer. Councillor Anne Moore. Councillor Neil Moore. Councillor Michael Morgan.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Jane Norman. Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn. Councillor Andrew Parker.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Bob Penrose.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Sandra Perks. Councillor Andrew Robertson.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Leighton Rowlands.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Neil Thomas.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Stefan William. Councillor Margaret Wilkinson.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Eddie Williams.
Against the amendment.
Councillor Mark Wilson.
Against the amendment.
And Councillor Margarita Wright.
Against the amendment.
41 against, 4 in favour.
Okay. Now we'll take the substantive motion before you. And again, if you can explain if you are for the motion, for the recommendations before you, or against. Councillor Julie Aviat. Councillor Vincent Bailey. Councillor Rhiannon Birch. Councillor Jonathan Bird.
For the amendment. Oh, sorry, for the motion. My mind is elsewhere.
Teaser.
Councillor Bronwyn Brooks. Councillor Liz Burnett. Councillor George Carroll. Councillor Christine Cave. Councillor Janice Charles.
For the amendment.
Councillor
For the motion. It's catching, yeah.
Councillor Millie Collins. Councillor Jeff Cox. Councillor Robert Crowley, Councillor Pamela Drake, Councillor Vince Driscoll, Councillor Stuart Edwards, Councillor Ben Gray, Councillor Owen Griffiths, Councillor Stephen Griffiths, Councillor Tony Hampton, Councillor Sally Hanks, Councillor Nick Hodges, Councillor Hunter Jarvie, Councillor Gwyn John, Councillor Ian Johnson, Councillor Gordon Kemp, Councillor Peter King, Councillor Matthew Lloyd, Councillor Kevin Marnie, Councillor Catherine McCaffer, Councillor Anne Moore, Councillor Neil Moore, Councillor Michael Morgan, Councillor Jane Norman, Councillor Rachel Nugent-Finn, Councillor Andrew Parker, Councillor Bob Penrose, Councillor Sandra Perks, Councillor Andrew Robertson, Councillor Leighton Rowlands,
For the recommendation.
Councillor Neil Thomas, Councillor Stefan William, Councillor Margaret Wilkinson, Councillor Eddie Williams, Councillor Mark Wilson,
Recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 4.
and Councillor Margarita Wright.
Motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 6, reports of the Managing Director. Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is just for noting. It's the use of the Managing Director's emergency powers. I don't intend to go into any detail. It's all there in front of you. All I'll say is I take full responsibility for the mess up in 3A, but that's now been sorted. So I'd move the report.
Second.
All note. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 7, Joint Consultative Forum, election of Chairman and Vice Chairman. Leader.
Okay. Thank you again, Madam Mayor. At the annual meeting, we erroneously appointed a Chairman and Vice Chairman of the Joint Consultative Forum. I won't take responsibility for that. But this is contrary to the constitution of the JCF, and this report regularises the appointment process. As a result of approving this report, hopefully we do, the Chairman of the JCF will be a member of this Council appointed at the first meeting, and the Vice Chairman will also be appointed at the meeting, but by the trade union representatives. The report also makes alterations to the JCF terms of reference to reflect these changes. Another point is that the Constitution of the JCF also offers for name substitutes, so I'm adding an extra recommendation to allow for this, and that recommendation, recommendation 3, is that group leaders inform the head of democratic services of the specific substitutes for each member of the Joint Consultative Forum, if they wish to do so. And just to let you know that my names are, the substitute for Janice Charles is Catherine McCaffer, substitute for Ben Gray, Leighton Rowlands, substitute for Stephen Griffiths is Vince Driscoll, and the substitute for Tony Hampton is Vince Bailey. And if the other group members who would like to, they don't have to do it now, but you can let Jeff Wyatt know. If
I'll let Jeff know in a week or so.
And with that additional recommendation, I move the report.
Yeah, second, Madam.
Second.
Councillor Johnson.
Could I nominate Nick Hodges as a substitute for that committee?
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9. No. Oh, sorry, Councillor
I
Gwynne-John.
substitute Jane Norman for myself.
Thank you. Agreed? Yeah, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 8, review of the Council's constitution. Councillor Hunter, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a housekeeping report, really, just to tidy things up following the recent redesignation of certain cabinet portfolios and the redistribution of certain responsibilities. Paragraph 4 sets this out. It's something that I think you've all probably read. It seeks to align previous officer delegations with current cabinet portfolios and recommends granting the monitoring officer, in consultation with the cabinet member for legal and regulatory services, which happens to be myself, delegated authority to deal with the situation where there is any doubt about the applicability of the recommendation number 3. There was one typographical error insofar as in recommendation number 4, the last words should be recommendation 3 above, not recommendation 2 above, because it doesn't make sense. Otherwise, it's referring to the wrong previous recommendation. But subject to that amendment of the number 2 being replaced by the number 3, I move the recommendations in the report, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Second.
All agreed to recommendations 1 to 4? Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 9A. Leader? Oh, it just...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a reference from Cabinet. It's just for noting it's the renaming of the newly amalgamated school as St Helens Catholic Primary School. So it's just for noting.
Thank you.
Aye.
Moving on to agenda item 10, to receive questions and answers pursuant to section 4.18.2, 4.18.7 of the Council's Constitution.
First question is to be answered by Councillor Parker.
The first question is to be answered by Councillor Parker, Cabinet Member for Housing and Building Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This refers to the safety of council land registered social landlord-owned properties with multiple occupations. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Firstly, may I take this opportunity to offer our condolences and sympathy to those families whose loved ones may have died or been injured in the tragic events of the 14th of June. This was clearly an event of catastrophic proportions and continues to be considerable concern to all of us. You will by now have received an email advising of the actions of our officers and our plans to reassess our tenants, but I would update as follows. Over the last 2 weeks, officers have reviewed and evaluated our fire safety protocols and procedures in light of the Grenfell Tower disaster. Officers have been in direct contact with our contractors and specialist external wall insulation providers to seek the necessary assurances regarding the type and insulation materials that have been applied to some of our flats and houses. Neither the council nor the local RSLs own any high-rise flats in the Vale of Glamorgan, and the cladding system used in the refurbishment of Grenfell Tower has not been used on any other residential social housing in the Vale. For your reassurance, all our flats with communal areas have been risk assessed by appropriately trained staff. These assessments are supported by monthly scheduled communal area inspections, highlighting any fire protection and repair issues that may have subsequently become evident. In addition, the Council undertakes cyclical servicing and maintenance of all fire protection systems and has auditable reports which are regularly reviewed by the Housing, Health and Safety Compliance team. The compliance team remit is to consider all health and safety related matters in council housing, and the team was involved in discussions relating to the specification for and the application of external wall insulation systems. The insulation cladding system used, which are not the same as in London, is deemed safe under the existing guidance and exceeds current building regulations. However, this might change in light of recent events. The contractor's work has already been independently checked as the work progressed on completion. In terms of reassurance visits and information, senior staff have checked all records regarding inspections, and these are up to date. Staff have also attended coffee mornings at our sheltered schemes, providing fire safety awareness advice. Officers are currently visiting and providing fire safety information leaflets and evacuation advice to tenants in communal flats, and this should be completed by the end of this week. In terms of private rented properties, the Council does not have an overarching legal responsibility in relation to fire safety, but does have a duty of care out of an inspection where advised that there are hazards exists. The Council must apply the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System, which is an evidence-based methodology for assessing risk against 29 potential hazards, including fire. Where a Category 1 hazard is found, that is a high-risk hazard, then the Council will be under a duty to take action, for example, by requiring certain works or prohibiting use of part of all of the premises or a prohibition order. The Council also has mandatory licensing powers in respect of larger houses in multiple occupation and additional licensing powers for a number of smaller houses in multiple occupation in the Castle Land renewal area. Means of escape in case of fire is considered at every licensing inspection, and license conditions requiring fire safety facilities and equipment are routinely applied within the licensing conditions. In relation to homelessness and the discharge of housing duties into the private sector, the Housing Department has a duty to ensure that the accommodation provided adheres to Chapter 19 of the Code of Guidance. This requires authority to ensure that the conditions of properties which are sourced, allocated for people under Part 2 of the Housing Wales Act 2014 are a safe physical condition. All source private rented accommodation is inspected by qualified environmental health officers before deemed appropriate to use.
Dr. Ian Johnson.
Thank you very much for that detailed answer. I'm very pleased to have reassurance to know that the Council is being proactive on this issue, which is of great concern to us all. As a local councillor, I know around 15% of the Vales blocks of flats are within my ward, and a large number of residents have contacted me asking for more information on this. And I hope that we'll be able to have a copy of your statement that we can pass on to them. In the meantime, has the Council considered hosting its own drop-in session so that residents can come and ask further questions of councillors? And also, I have previously asked about linked smoke alarms in flats with blocks of flats with multiple occupancies. I was wondering if not now, later, could that be reported back as the progress regarding that issue?
Yeah, I mean, safety is our major concern at this stage. I will take all that back to the officers, and if anybody else has concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. I understand the difficulty some of the residents will have, especially the older residents, so please let me know if we can be of any help.
Thank you, Councillor Parkin. Moving on to question 2 from Councillor Dr. I.J. Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning.
Councillor Johnson, your question about Communities First services. Communities First is being phased out as a national programme, and in the current year the Council has 70% of its previous grant to deliver the programme. This does not affect the Communities for Work programme delivered by the Communities First team, for which extended funding has been offered. Officers engaged with Welsh Government during the consultation on the closure of the programme, and as a result, 2 new funding streams have been identified. There will be a legacy fund available to the Council to continue the strongest elements of Communities First for at least a further 2 years. There will also be an employability grant, which is available to allow further work with unemployed individuals, not just limited to Communities First areas, but to the whole of the Council area. Research is currently underway to inform the design of a new programme using these funds.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much for that answer. I'm pleased to hear of sort of a limited pot of funding. Would it be possible to meet with the Cabinet member and perhaps other members who represent Communities First areas to discuss how that's going to be determined in future?
Certainly.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Johnson, and also to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning, Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. This is about improvements to Barry's Houghton Road shopping area. A budget of £121,000 has been identified in the capital programme to provide grant assistance for improvements to Barry Town Centre properties. Loan funding of £850,000 has been identified for a town centre affordable housing scheme to be delivered by an RSL, which will lead to the creation of 8 flats at first and second floor level. The money has been identified through the Welsh Government Town Centre Loan Scheme. A budget of £70,000 has been identified in the capital programme to undertake survey work and design work at key locations in the Gladstone Road and Dockview Road area of the town centre, as part of a proposed major gateway improvement scheme. It is intended that this important scheme will form the basis for seeking further grant support to deliver in due course as part of the Welsh Government's Vibrant and Viable Places funding to be relaunched in 1819. Several loading bays in Houghton Road have been recently converted from 2-hour parking bays on a trial basis in an attempt to improve customer parking, especially in the lower part of the town centre. This trial came about through consultation with the Town Centre Forum. Other initiatives will be considered in due course. Tenders are currently being invited for work on an improved ice rink facility on the run-up to Christmas, and the Council would deliver events to support this. Further funds are still available to new event organisers. Works will be completed in the autumn on a major refurbishment of Gladstone Gardens, which will also help to enhance the border of the town centre. And finally, the Council's Town Centre Development Officer continues to work closely with and support the traders throughout the year, including providing support at the traders' own meetings and through the forum which was set up last year.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I was wondering if the Cabinet member could tell me if he has a strategy for reducing the number of vacant properties within the Houghton Road shopping area.
Personally, I don't, but I believe we are working on it, and I'll come back to you with further information.
Thank you. Moving on to question 4. From Councillor Johnson to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Johnson. This answer is a little shorter than the previous one. A report detailing the performance of the Council's environmental enforcement partners, including 3GS, will go to Cabinet in November 2017. This is detailed in the Cabinet's annual strategic work programme for June 2017 to April 2018, which is available on the Council's website.
Thank you for that response. Obviously, the previous administration had promised one a little earlier than that. I'm just wondering, sort of whether the how you're going to assess that the performance of this company, which has already been shown to have only 1.5 tickets issued per day.
I think Councillor Johnson, I will wait for the report, which will detail about 12 months performance, I believe, before I can actually respond to that one. But there's a possibility the report may go to scrutiny first, which means it would be possibly before November.
Thank you. Moving on to question 5, which is from Councillor Mahoney to the Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Planning, Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. It's about the biomass plant. I would advise you that the current environmental permit application is for determination by Natural Resources Wales and deals with matters that only that organisation has a statutory responsibility for. NRW have received all the relevant information held by the local planning authority, including the report to the planning committee and the planning permission that was issued by the council. NRW also have full access to all the relevant information held by the council through the online planning register. Accordingly, there is no further relevant information that could be provided to NRW. It should be noted that the decision on the environmental permit will be NRW's alone and will be made on the basis of all relevant information submitted to them. That said, I am aware that the leader of the council recently wrote to a member of Barry Town Council to advise that he has asked that colleagues from shared regulatory services make contact with NRW to discuss the matter further and to ensure that the concerns of the community are clearly understood and taken on board when reaching their decisions. To this end, the public health of the residents and the future public health of all our communities is of vital importance to this current administration. Such an approach, in my is, in my view, proportionate and measured.
Councillor Mahoney.
Thank you very much. I thought we got rid of people not answering a question when the way the Labour lot went out. That's not quite the question I was asking. Fair play to Barry Town Council. They've employed an expert, and the volunteer group Diag immediately got NRW to come up with 30 questions that they're not happy with the licence of this. That was submitted, even the applicants submitting false and out-of-date legislation referring to. Now, if those two organisations can do it, why can't we? Why can't the Vale, with its greater resources? My actual question was, has or will the Vale employ a nationally or internationally renowned expert to look into this, to go to NRW? We know the planning people are, but they aren't internationally renowned experts on these matters. We know NRW are deciding on this. So my question is, and my supplementary question is, you don't think that it's worth the Vale, in order to protect its citizens, not just in Barry, but in my ward in Sully, which has a prevailing wind, and the rest of the Vale, should be dipping into its own vaster resources than Barry Town Council to get internationally renowned advice to present to NRW before they make their decision?
My answer to you, Councillor Marnie, is that NRW have far greater resources than this council. You all know that we are under financial constraint. And why should us as a council be funding NRW's job? It is not our job, it is their job and their job alone. So my answer...
Moving on to question 6 from Councillor Mahoney to the Cabinet Member for Regulatory and Legal Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your question, Councillor Marnie. I know that this is an issue that's caused great concern both to you and my colleague Bob Penrose, as your fellow ward member in Sully. So I've got quite a detailed reply for you. Unfortunately, the suggestion that you make in your question that the site in Hayes Road has been declared by the Welsh Assembly Planning Inspectorate to be unsafe is not a correct statement. The northernmost section of the site is identified by the Welsh Government's development advice maps, which are developed by Natural Resources Wales on their behalf, as being within a C2 flood zone. The advice note is intended to provide a framework within which risk arising from flooding can be assessed when considering the location of new development as part of the development management process. This is an area identified as being used to indicate that only less vulnerable development should be considered, subject to application of justification tests, including acceptability of consequences, and emergency services and highly vulnerable development should not be considered there. As such, the identification of part of the former civic amenity site as being within a flood zone is not an indication that the site is at imminent risk of flooding, or indeed as is it intended or designed to be used as in a health and safety context. It's a tool to be used, and advises that future development management decisions should be guided in the location of any new development. Indeed, there are a number of dwellings within the area also within that C2 flood zone, and they were there long before the designation was devised. And yet there's no requirement for the council to rehouse those households under the provisions of the planning legislation. The relevant technical advice note, or TAN, or indeed any other health and safety legislation. With this in mind, the LDP inspector did not find the site to be unsafe. He found the site to be an unsuitable location for a permanent allocated gypsy and travellers site, having regard to the development management process only. Having clarified the site has not been declared unsafe by the inspectorate, with regard to the safety duty towards those persons currently in residence on the site, it should be noted that under the provisions of Section 10 of the Housing Wales Act 2014, the Council has a duty to prepare an assessment of the accommodation needs of gypsies and travellers within its area. The Council has undertaken an assessment that has been considered by the Welsh ministers, and subject to some minor non-consequential amendments, the Minister has agreed with the assessment and its findings. The assessment was undertaken in accordance with the Welsh Government guidance on undertaking gypsy and traveller accommodation assessments. The occupiers at Hayes Road were considered as having their needs met on the site, as the Hayes Road site is tolerated, and that word is a technical term, I believe, for the purposes of the guidance. In terms of meeting the identified need, the 2014 Act sets out that if a need is identified within the authority's area with respect to the provision of sites on which mobile homes may be stationed, the authority must exercise its powers under the Mobile Homes Wales Act 2013 so far as may be necessary to meet those needs. As the occupiers of Hayes Road were not identified as being in need, the Council does not at present have a statutory duty under the 2014 Act with regard to the relocation of the occupiers there. Notwithstanding this, the Council is aware that when the next assessment is undertaken, the site will no longer be a tolerated site, and the occupiers of the site, if they are still resident, will be identified as then being in need. In light of this, a project board has been established with the aim of identifying and procuring a site for the Hayes Road residents to move on to. The work of the project board is underway and is currently on track to seek to secure planning permission by May of next year. The project group officers are seeking the engagement of the occupiers in order to identify their needs and aspirations, and are in the process of considering where best to accommodate them, taking into account as far as possible their input into the process. This approach was agreed following a Cabinet decision in June last year, which included the relevant timetable and the subsequent referrals to both the Homes and Safe Communities Scrutiny Committee and the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee. Welsh Government guidance on the management of unauthorised camping, together with case law, provides that where a local authority does not have an authorised site, toleration on unauthorised sites should be considered, as is the case here. Should the occupation of the site present a danger to persons the Council would be in a position to seek to remove the occupiers. To date, no danger has been identified or raised during the period of occupation. This Council takes its obligations under health and safety legislation very seriously and continues to keep health and safety matters at the site under review. In this context, a trespasser is not a visitor and is not owed a common law duty of care, and the relevant legal provisions of the Occupiers Liability Act 1984 relating to protecting non-visitors but not their personal property is limited to a duty to take such care as is reasonable, to see that the trespasser does not suffer injury on the premises by reason of any danger potentially posed. I would draw your attention, Councillor, to the fact that the LDP inspector did not find the site to be unsafe. Rather, he found it to be an unsuitable location for a permanent allocated gypsy and traveller site due to the C2 flood zone allocation affecting the northern part of it. Following the last inspection, advice was provided to the occupants in terms of best practice. There have been no incidents documented, either before the occupation of the land or since, of any flooding to the specific area upon which the travellers reside, and in addition, there are no known dangers associated with the occupation. No issues have been raised either by those who occupy the site. I'm sorry the answer was so long, but I hope it addressed the points raised in your question.
Councillor Rooney.
I am very well acquainted with the situation. I do feel, perhaps not by yourself, that there's been a bit of a play on words on this. Firstly, it's the approach roads that are in the C2 zone. The northern part of the site, a substantial part of that, is in the C2 flood zone. The planning inspector, as you quite rightly said it was unsuitable, but he said it was unsuitable because of the safety issues of emergency vehicles and the possible flooding of the low part of the site. I will give you my question now in a second. As a former resident of Bendrick Road, the C2 flood zone is often described and is being quoted here again, another member of the Labour Party in the last administration, having looked it up, as a 1 in 1,000 year chance of flooding. Well, having lived in Bendrick Road, I can only say we've had 6,000 years of flooding in the 13 years I lived there. So anyway, my question is this. You mentioned trespassers time and time again there as well. Can I assume that from your words that I picked out there from that comprehensive reply, that the Vale administration is actively looking for new sites, or suitable sites, shall we say, as this has been judged unsuitable, I would say unsafe as well, as we speak?
You may make that inference, and I can assure you that I've already been involved in discussions concerning this issue since we've taken on this administration.
The next question is question 7 from Councillor Stephen Willem to the Cabinet Member of Neighbourhood Services and Transport, Councillor Jeff Cox.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor William, I agree with your concern on this unfortunate incident of littering on Whitmore Bay. At present, the Council's 2 in-house enforcement officers patrol Barry Island at least 3 times a week, and they are also supported by 2 3GS officers. As part of their patrols, they ensure compliance to bylaws, dogs on beaches, and environmental offences such as litter. It is difficult to manage this in the exceptional busy periods that limit the officer's ability to walk between members of the public on the beach to determine the extent of beach cleanliness and whether any litter has been intentionally left. Often the extent of litter is only recognisable after members of the public have vacated the beach. Additionally, it's difficult to determine who has left the litter, and it is necessary for our officers to witness the offence. This only occurs when we receive exceptionally hot weather and visitors to our resorts significantly increase. During these exceptionally busy times, We have found it is better to educate and raise awareness among our beach users. We make announcements over the tannoy, provide additional bins on beaches, and promote litter-free beaches by having afternoon litter picks, which involve beach volunteers. This also adds peer pressure to other beach users. This approach will be used throughout the 6 weeks school summer holidays on exceptionally busy days, and this will be complemented by the use of enforcement officers.
I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for that comprehensive reply. A lot of points there that are very encouraging. I believe also that the carrot and the stick are needed to make our beaches cleaner. In light of the fact that enforcement has so far not yet worked, I was wondering, and this is my question to the Cabinet Member, in light of this, would the member be willing to hold a review of this, and with a mind to include proactive measures of encouragement as well as stronger enforcement? So it's a review that I'm asking for. Thank you.
Yes, I think what you're saying really covers what my reply to an earlier question. We are having a report on the enforcement activities, and no doubt we will learn lessons from this approach and implement recommendations following it.
Thank you. Moving on to question 8, which is from Councillor Collins to the leader, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Collins, for your question. For fear of being accused of not answering the question, can I start by saying that there is actually no meeting planned at the present time. But I will go on to say, as advised in response to question 5, the current environmental permit application is for determination by NRW and relates to matters that only that organisation has a statutory responsibility for. As leader, I have raised the concerns of the community with the head of Shared Regulatory Services and requested that colleagues enter into a dialogue with Natural Resources Wales to ensure that the very real concerns of the community are understood. Clearly, what matters to us all is the protection and promotion of the public health of the residents of Barry and beyond, and the communities which feel very strongly about the situation. It is for this reason that I have suggested ongoing dialogue, and I understand that there have been recent exchanges between NRW and colleagues from Shared Regulatory Services. The current position is that further information is awaited by NRW from the applicant. I'm also advised that a second consultation will then follow, at which time a formal meeting may well be appropriate. I trust this reassures you that dialogue continues.
Yeah, Councillor Cook.
Could you confirm if you and your administration are for or against this, the incinerator?
Can I confirm whether me and this administration are for or against the incinerator? I think it's a difficult question to answer because the decision doesn't lie with us. We are concerned about the health of the people of the Vale. NRW are doing the work, and they will decide whether it is appropriate for this incinerator to be working at this location, and we will have to abide by that. If it does get its licence and it is the incinerator is working, then obviously the council will monitor and do everything in its power to monitor to make sure that the incinerator is safe and that it isn't causing any concern to residents of Barry.
Can you stop heckling, please? Thank you. Moving on to question 9. Yeah, I'm sorry, if you don't stop heckling, I will have to ask you to be removed. I'm sorry, but if you don't stop heckling, I will have to ask you to be removed. Thank you. Moving on to question 9 from Ms Collins, and it is to the Cabinet Member of Regeneration and Planning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Collins. It's about Castle Land Renewal Area. Castle Land Castle Land Renewal Area was practically concluded in March 2017 when the public realm of Upper Holton Road was dramatically improved and following earlier improvements to approximately 1,200 houses. The programme as a whole is currently being evaluated following its conclusion. Welsh Government no longer provides renewal area grant. However, the Council has set aside £750,000 of its own funds to allow the designation of a further renewal regeneration area in 2017-18. We are currently evaluating where that area will be designated. Communities First does not directly address the renewal of homes or the built environment, focusing instead on the prosperity, health and welfare of individuals with practical support, although I would be the first to acknowledge that a suite of interventions and measures all contribute to the well-being of the communities.
Thank you.
Moving on to question 10, which is from Councillor King to the Leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor King. The question is on equalities training. And the reply, Councillor King, you will be aware of the Council's stated commitment to the equalities agenda, a commitment which will continue to be progressed by the new administration. Irrespective of whether members, be they new or returning, have attended previous training, the Council's initial member induction member development programme includes a mandatory introduction session on equalities. To date, I can confirm that 31 of 47 members have attended. Officers are currently in the process of arranging a further introductory session to ensure the remaining 16 members comply with the requirement to attend. I am advised that a further session has been arranged for the 13th of September. The figures, the 16 includes, these are the ones that haven't as yet done the training, include 1 cabinet member, 2 scrutiny committee chairmen and 6 other chairmen. And they will all have received an email inviting them to attend the September session. Officers will be facilitating further and more detailed equality sessions as part of the ongoing member development programme.
Councillor King.
Madam Chair, supplementary if I may. Thank you, Leader. I certainly welcome that encouragement that you've given me, but I remain to be convinced, because a number of meetings have had their days changed, their times changed, without certainly any consultation with me. Maybe I don't count, but my question is: have you done a quality impact assessment upon on those changes and how they will affect the staff, other elected members, and indeed the public who may wish to attend?
Thank you, Councillor King, for the supplementary question. No, the answer is I haven't. But it's pretty obvious at the start of a new administration things will need to change. And when people are put in place, it's at the discretion of the chairman to change meetings. The actual date of this meeting was changed, but it was the suggestion of Councillor Moore that we put the LDP special meeting along with tonight's meeting, so that it allowed us to bring it forward and not have a meeting running into the summer break. I was quite happy to accept that suggestion, and hence we're here tonight, rather than having to come back in July, later in July, for another meeting. But it's at the discretion of the chairman to change dates of meetings if they wish. I've tried my best to give everybody as much notice as possible of any changes, and hopefully as we move into the administration now, things will settle down and there won't be changes to meeting dates.
Thank you. Moving on to question 11 from Councillor Margaret Wilkinson to the Cabinet Member for Housing and Building Services.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. This again refers back to the fire safety in council properties. I would refer the member to the carefully considered and responsible answer that I gave previously and the recent email sent to elected members by the operational manager of public housing. And I would repeat that it is all in our best interest to continue as strongly as we can to ensure that our residents are kept safely, and you have my assurance that will be done.
Thank you. As I'm the member for the largest council estate in the Vale of Glamorgan, I have concerns. I am so pleased that you're going to keep the tenants informed, but please, I'm asking you, will you please keep all the members in this chamber informed of any developments? And have you thought of sprinklers, like the government has recommended that sprinklers should go into properties in any way of flats or shelter accommodation? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I have considered the sprinkler question. Obviously, you know my professional background, but it is far too soon to actually rationalise and make a decision of that. But rest assured, all fire aspects, and there are far more than that, will be carefully considered, and I assure you I will keep you informed. In fact, I might even come and visit you and run through everything, because your responsibility is quite important.
Moving on to question 12 from Councillor Anne Moore to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Councillor Mrs Moore. As you will be aware, the revenue and capital budgets for the current financial year were established at the Council meeting of the 1st of March this year. We are currently considering all aspects of these budgets in order to ensure that functions such as highway surfacing are appropriately funded during our administrative term, but this will take time. First, it is my intention to debate the details of the proposed highway surfacing plan for 2017-2020 at the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee in July, to seek the views of this committee prior to the matter being considered by Cabinet and the plan agreed. After conclusion of this process, I will determine the level of resources required to support the remaining years of the programme.
Thank you, Councillor Cox, and I'm glad that it's coming to scrutiny. But I wonder if, will the Cabinet Member please explain how the candidates in Ilford claimed in a manifesto, which is this manifesto, that they, as candidates, had themselves delivered the resurfacing of Queen Street and Island Road in Barry. This was clearly a false claim, in having been agreed by the Labour-led Cabinet on the 25th of July 2016 in the Highway Resurfacing 3-year plan for 2016-19, and which confirmed that both would be resurfaced during 16 and 17. That being the case, will the Cabinet Member agree with me that the councillors for Ilford should apologise to their electorate for making these false and inaccurate statements in their manifestos and for bringing the Conservative Party into disrepute?
Thank you. I would go back to what I said earlier. We are currently considering all aspects of the budgets and looking at the proposals for the year. In addition to looking at our own funds, we will also be writing to Welsh Government to seek financial support.
Thank you for evading the... You know, we've got the proof here. You actually claimed the credit for things that this council had done in the previous administration.
To question 13 from Councillor Burnett to the Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Burnett, for your question on education funding. It's our ambition to continue to fund education at the current level. In view of the present annual funding settlement from Welsh Government, funding for education in the Vale of Glamorgan will be reviewed annually and in the context of service pressures across the Council. This mirrors the approach taken by the previous administration. I'm sure, however, that all in the Chamber will be aware that the Vale of Glamorgan Council has traditionally been and continues to be one of the lowest funded councils in Wales, and responsibility for that must ultimately rest with Welsh Government.
Thank you, Councillor Penrose. Slightly worrying that your area of main priority, you don't commit to funding to IBA straight off. Would you therefore then, if you can't commit to that, commit to delivery of the 5-year £77 million school investment programme and the asset renewal programme as agreed by Council on the 1st of March this year, which is essential to deliver co-ed for Barry?
Schools have collectively made representation to Welsh Government about the funding situation, and I will ensure to support them in future by lobbying on their behalf. I acknowledge that this approach has not been successful in the past, but that does not justify lifting the pressure for a change to the current funding system. This is also an issue with the amount of balances held by schools. At the end of the last financial year, a quarter of the schools carried forward excessive balances, and I intend to ensure that this funding is used for pupils who are being educated in those schools now. In addition to that, I have had a conversation with Kirsty Williams, and I'm awaiting a meeting date to pursue the matter further on funding.
Thank you. Question number 14 to the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services and Transport from Councillor Mark Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Wilson. The comments concerning black bag collection frequencies in the leaflets you refer to related to the actions of a number of authorities in Wales who are considering reducing the frequency of collections to 3 or even 4 weekly. Our residents read the national press, would have seen these comments, and we were merely reassuring them that if elected, we would not be reducing our black bag collection frequencies.
Yeah, supplementary. Great for that clarification. But could you confirm there was any plans to introduce 4 weekly bag collections in the Vale? And the second question I'm going to ask you quickly on this was, in your leaflets, you claimed that you're going to introduce seagull-proof
What is your
bags.
supplementary question,
That's my
please,
supplementary.
Councillor Wilson?
Are you going to introduce seagull-safe bags, so that seagulls cannot attack these bags and get into them? That's what you want, isn't it? Good. You're not answering supplementary. You're not answering sequel bags.
Seagull-proof bags. Question.
Moving on to question 15 from Councillor Bromwyn Books to the leader, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brooks, for your question. Must admit I didn't see this one coming. The question fails to recognise the role of Cabinet members, which is extremely surprising and worrying, given Councillor Brooks was herself a Cabinet member up until May of this year. Cabinet members have to and must work corporately across the Vale Council, across the Vale of Glamorgan, irrespective of the ward that they represent. They must act in the interests of all communities and residents of the Vale, irrespective of geography or gender. This is what we will do. My Cabinet colleagues and I are determined to deliver for the people of the Vale of Glamorgan. If Councillor Brooks requires more detail on the role of Cabinet members, I would invite her to refer to the Council's constitution.
Thank you, Leader. Slightly puzzling answer there, I must admit. A year ago, the country joined us to celebrate our change of name to the Vale of Glamorgan. And yet now we see this council denigrated as the Mail of Glamorgan. That's been publicly quoted around the country, which I think is a very sad day. So my question is, could you also explain why you've only nominated men, some inexperienced first-time councillors, when there were experienced women councillors available, to any senior paid positions such as planning, licensing or scrutiny chair roles, leaving your female members to cover the unpaid roles?
Thank you, Councillor Brooks, for the question. I didn't think it was all supposed to be about money. I'm surprised that you actually brought the question up of special responsibility allowances. But gender pay gap. Yeah, huge, yeah. All I can say is I appointed the Cabinet. I didn't choose our members to represent us on other committees. That was a group decision, and all members of the group took part in those decisions. And a lot of the members that put their names forward volunteered, and that's how it pans out. But as far as the Cabinet is concerned, yes, I appointed the Cabinet. I appointed the Cabinet on experience, and that is, firmly stick to that. I didn't put anybody on the cabinet because they were a man, and I didn't leave anybody off the cabinet because they were a woman. I'd be quite happy to work with a cabinet of all women if they were the ones with the experience and the ones that fitted into the places. So I'm quite happy with my decision of who I've put on the cabinet, and I think I'd ask you to judge us by what we manage to do over the next few years rather than on what you're thinking now. So.
Moving on to agenda item 11 now, questions from the public. And the first question is from Town Councillor Shirley Hodges to the Leader and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. Shirley, would you like to read it? Okay, thank you, Shirley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hodges. The question is regarding Welsh Language Champion. And the reply, the Council is fully committed to the Welsh language and drew up a comprehensive action plan in response to the standards which has largely been delivered. Indeed, the Vale was one of the few councils which did not appeal against any of the large number of standards with which we were directed to comply. Our annual report, drawing attention to our achievements in the first year of implementing the standards, went to Cabinet on the 19th of June and is on the Council's website. In addition, we have drawn up a 5-year strategy for promoting the language in the Vale, also on our website. Responsibility for the Welsh language in the Council lies with the Cabinet Member for Learning and Skills, and the Welsh language lies within the remits of the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee. The Council also has elected members who are champions for equality and diversity, and the Welsh language would naturally fall within their remit. Given all these arrangements, the Council is already well placed to deliver in respect of the Welsh language and has not felt that an additional champion would add to what is already a very effective approach.
The next question is from Mr. Mark Bowen to Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture. Is Mr. Mark Bowen here? Would you like to read your question, Mr. Bowen? I think that's unnecessary. Okay, thank you. Cabinet Member for Learning and Culture.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Bowen, for your question. The promotion and sufficiency for Welsh medium education is of key strategic focus within the Learning and Skills Directorate and forms part of the Council's wider Welsh promotion strategy. As part of the Welsh Government's ambitious target of 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, the Education Department has completed development of the Welsh in the Education Strategic Plan, and the anagram it's WESP, for 2017 to 2020, which is currently being reviewed by Welsh Government. Included in this are a number of actions aimed at promoting the benefits of bilingualism and education via the medium of Welsh, including opportunities for a Welsh immersion programme. As a council, we are continuing to ensure access to Welsh medium education is available, with the most recent example this being the 19 million planned investment into expanding Ysgol Cymraeg Bro Morgannwg to accommodate increased demand. Officers in Learning and Skills have been working closely with the Welsh Medium Cluster of primary schools in developing a new leaflet promoting Welsh medium education and tackling some of the most frequently asked questions from their parents. The leaflet is being made available this week, with copies to be circulated to schools, libraries and at public events. It will also be made available online on valeofglamorgan.gov.uk. Our community learning teams are also hard at work in providing new immersive learning opportunities for adults and accessible programs for anybody interested in learning Welsh at any level to support the use of the language at home and in the workplace.
Thank you. There are no part 2 items and there are no urgent items, so this meeting is closed. Thank you all very much.